Yeah, thank you all for coming today. Yeah, several years ago, really 15 years ago, I guess I decided to start researching a little bit on the math of hip-hop music, because that's what I was sort of more into at the time. But then, as the years progressed, I kind of found that there were some interesting, there were some interesting things I could do by extending it to pop and rock also. So that's what this presentation's about. The first slide, I just kind of made a little collage of some of the artists that we'll be talking about, or at least most of them. I mean, most of the people here, I think they will come up somehow in this discussion. So you may recognize some of them. All right. Just a little, cover sheet here. So, all right, great. I know it's kind of hard to see on top, but what that says at first line, it says the frequency is the number of complete vibrations per second. So one thing is I probably should have brought a guitar to demonstrate this. I normally do, but imagine plucking the string of a guitar. It's going to vibrate back and forth, and if it vibrates 261.6 times per second, then the frequency is middle C, and that's the note that you're hearing. So, if I had my keyboard here, I'd just push middle C, and you'd hear, what that sounds like. And you can kind of imagine that vibrating, right, the string vibrating. Then that brings us to the period. The period is the amount of time it takes for a complete vibration. So, of course, if the frequency is 261.6 hertz, then the period would be what we call the reciprocal of that, so 1 over that. Which comes out to about 0.0038 seconds. So, if you can imagine, that's pretty quick for something to be moving, right? And so that's exactly how many vibrations you're seeing. And then you can kind of see this little picture down there. Some of you might be thinking, well, what about the sound? Doesn't that change? So yeah, it gets quieter. And so that would be considered your amplitude. So like on this, which would be kind of like a sine curve, but with a decreasing amplitude, you notice that it starts loud, and then as time goes on, it gets quieter and quieter until you pretty much don't hear it anymore. So that's what that demonstrates. So that's that curve, right? So the volume's getting quieter and quieter as time goes along. So those are a few vocabulary words maybe it's helpful to be familiar with as we go through this. So then we're going to kind of get into how instruments were created. It's hard to see, but down below is actually a keyboard, which is a pretty nice prop. But you can see that they're black notes and white notes. The only downside is we can't see what those notes are. If you could, yeah. Yeah, let's try to fix that. That might help a little bit. Oh, there you go. Not totally, though. But anyway, if you were to just pluck a string, you'd hear some tone. Now, if you were to take that same string and divide it in half and pluck, say, the bottom half, then you're going to get another C, but that C will be 1 octave higher. So on the keyboard, you may start off with this C. Whoops. Yeah. Can you guys see the keyboard okay? No? So you may start off with a C like right here, and if I chop that in half and pluck only half of that string, I'll end up a C an octave higher. So it's called an octave because there are 8 notes to get from here to here. You'd count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Right? I know I counted C already, but that's why they call it an octave. So the white notes would kind of represent that. So if you're not familiar with music, usually we start at the note C and then we end at the next C, and that would be 1 full octave. And then the black notes are, I'm just calling them sharps in this case. So we'll get to that. Now, similarly, yeah. Yeah, I'll get to that in a second. Yeah. So next up is the fifth. So if I were to take that same string and divide it into 3 parts and only pluck 2/3 of it, what I'd be hearing is a fifth. And the frequency has a ratio of 3 to 2. I'll get to a little bit, I'll try to give you a little more information about those ratios, but the ratio of the frequency would be 3 to 2 in the case of a fifth. A fourth, now you're dividing your string into 4 parts and just plucking 3/4 of it. So that would give you your frequency a ratio of 4 to 3. So this one would have, frequency of something, and then shortening it would give us a 4 to 3 ratio. We call that a fourth. A major third would be splitting it up into 5 parts, same idea, and then a minor third would be splitting up into 6 parts in the same idea. So next up, I kind of want to explain to you why it's called thirds, right? Because you might be thinking that's kind of a strange name for it. So I want to kind of start with talking about the major third. You're counting 3 notes or 4 notes, depending on which one. So if you're starting here at C, for example, you count 1, 2, 3, 4, and then that puts you at E when you count what we call a full tone, including the black notes. Then once we're at E, we count 1, 2, 3, and so that would become a chord that's actually called a major third chord, a major chord, I should say. So that's a major chord, and you get that again by starting at middle C, for example. If you want the C major chord, you count 1, 2, 3, 4 full tones, followed by 1, 2, 3 full tones again. And, I think they're called, actually those are half tones, I'm sorry, they're actually called half tones, even though they're not always exactly half. The full tone would actually be the white notes, so sorry about that. So you count the half tones, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then followed by 1, 2, 3. For a major chord, for a minor chord, you would count 1, 2, 3, which would give you this black note, D sharp. We call that D sharp. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, back to G. So in both cases of the major and minor chords, you got a C and a G, and then it just depends what happens in between that. Does that make a little bit of sense? All right. So before I get to that slide, I actually wanted to just show a short video about this on YouTube. So.
For the 12 most common chords that you'll
about
see
chords.
more often than any of the chords in the majority of your songs. So don't get overwhelmed by how many chords there are. There's a lot of chords out there, and just like there's a lot of words in our vocabulary, eventually we want to have a lot of chords in our piano vocabulary. But for now, we just need to worry about 12 chords. And actually, we need to only worry about 6 major chords and 6 minor chords, and they're each the same. And it's all the white chords, except for B. So we're just worried about C major and minor, D major and minor, E major and minor, F major and minor, G major and minor, and A major and minor. And here's what they look like. Here's C major.
That's a major chord. These are all major chords. I mean, that's a minor chord.
So the middle finger goes down a half step from the major and minor. That's going to be the same everyone. Here's D major. Here's D minor. Here's E major. And here's E minor. Here's F major. Here's F minor. Here's G major. Here's G minor. And here's A major and A minor. Now, if you're struggling to...
So does that make a little bit of sense then? So your C major chord would be this note, and this note, whereas your C minor chord would be this note, and then back to this note again. So it's just that middle one that changes between the major and the minor. So yeah, so those are kind of some important chords to think about a little bit as we go along. So the reason I wanted to show that video was also because the first song that I wanted to introduce kind of reminded me of that, of the chords that he was playing there. But before we get into that, maybe you may be wondering a little bit about the frequency. So starting at C, if we're hitting C and D, which are a full tone apart from each other, the white note, one white note from the other, you're looking at a 9-to-8 ratio in frequency. And then if you're going to F, that's a 4-to-3 ratio. So we talked about these ratios a little bit before. And then going from C to G, which on those both the major and minor chords that we were looking at earlier, we are hitting both C and G and then something in between. But notice that 3-to-2 ratio in the frequency. And this is pretty arbitrary in a way. It was just to make all instruments work the same way. It was just decided at a conference that, let's just make the A following middle C have a frequency of 440 hertz. And then if you see in the green, highlighted in green, the 12th root of 2, that's because when you take some number and multiply it by the 12th root of 2, and then take that number to the 12th power, you get the original number back. And so, or you get the original number back doubled. And so you move up to the next octave by, multiplying the 12th root of 2 to the power of 12. So See if you can make a little sense out of that. Okay. Combining ratios. A major third and a minor third combined with a major third from the ratio sheet that I showed you with the string before gives you that, that chord right there, and we call that chord a fifth. So but all the chords that we've been talking about are called a fifth because you're looking at the 3-to-2 ratio. And if you take the difference, then you get a 9-to-8 ratio, which we saw on that last slide, which is a whole tone. For example, going from C to D. All right. So then, you know, for my math students especially, I would kind of show them this, these cosine graphs. They're cosine graphs because they start at 1. The 0, 1 is the first point. To demonstrate that if you're playing the regular C chord note at the same time as C an octave lower, then you're listening to two notes played at the same time whose frequencies end up overlapping with each other. So it sounds more fluid than if you were to hit two notes. Like, imagine hitting two notes on a keyboard next to each other. There's a lot of dissonance. It's kind of like that kind of sound. Whereas if you hit two C's at the same time, it sounds kind of nice. So that's what that graph represents up there. And then this one represents a 3-to-2 ratio down below, where you're still having an overlap, but it takes a little longer, but those notes still sound nice together. If I'm hitting C and G together, like kind of like how that guy was playing on that piano, this sounds kind of nice, right? Whereas if I hit notes that are too close to each other, it doesn't sound as good. So that's why the ratios, the smaller the ratios, the better the sound, in a sense. All right, so moving on. That first one up top, that's a major chord. That's actually the C-E-G chord I was talking about before. And you can see the C would be represented by one color, the E by another color, and the G by another color. And then when you hit those three notes at the same time, the dissonance isn't so bad. It's not all over the place. It's a nice periodic graph, right? It repeats itself every 0.0152 seconds. So that's repeating itself. And then down below is the same thing, but with a minor chord. In fact, the C, D sharp G1, which it takes 0.0382 seconds for all three of those notes to be heard at the same time. So when you listen to those chords that the guy was playing on the piano before, they sound nice because your ear doesn't take long to register 0.0382 seconds. So you're hearing all three notes happening at the same time, overlapping each other after just that much time. And that's like one full period of that chord. All right, so then this is a song that was really popular in 2002. It's called Hot in Here. The artist is Nelly. Have you guys heard of this song before? Okay, it's very popular in the summer of 2002 when I was just kind of a young college student. So, I was kind of really into it. And when I heard those major and minor chords that guy was playing, that's exactly what you're hearing in the song Hot in Here by Nelly. So, actually, this was another song. I forgot to play this one. That's not Hot in Here, but that's just a song by Nelly. Is there volume control on the... Anyway, that's Nelly. All right, so that's one popular song, but then this was the one that I want to talk about. But I'm just wondering if there's volume control where I can actually turn down the volume on the computer, so because it's going to be really loud. Okay, guess not. That's fine. So now we're going to listen to the song Hot in Here, and I want to kind of point out these chords. Now, what you'll notice, I kind of tried to color code them here. This one and this one, those are both minor chords, I think, and then these two are major chords. So I think I got that right. We'll see. So you can kind of see sometimes the major chords kind of have more of a happy sound, and the minor chords have more of a sad sound sometimes. But I just thought this was a good place to start. So. And so here are the chords. And then it repeats. and then just cycles around. And that's pretty much the whole song. Like, it's just... Sorry, I can't play that too much longer because I can't figure out the sound yet, like how to turn it down. So it's way too loud right now. I'll fix it maybe when I get a chance. But anyway, the point is pretty simple. You just have that 3-to-2 ratio over there. And then in between, you just have major and minor chords kind of alternating. And that's pretty much the whole song. So a lot of times in hip-hop songs, it's really easy just to break down the ratios and to see that they're nice. And this happens in a lot of hip-hop songs, by the way. OK, so then moving on from... Let's see if I can actually adjust the volume somehow. Does this adjust? No, that just adjusts the... Ah, here we go. OK, so this would adjust the volume of each song. I see. OK, cool. So then, I'm just playing a little short piece of a Michael Jackson song from the same album as the song from the Free Willy soundtrack. So... which is the song I'm going to actually talk about next. Whoops. Yeah, I'm not really... Let's see. And then let me try to enlarge that. Nope, that didn't work. OK, anyway, you get the point. I was trying to play this song, but you guys know it. So this is a song called Will You Be There? It's from his Dangerous album, Michael Jackson's Dangerous album in 1993. It was the Free Willy soundtrack song. And... here's what I wanted to talk about this. We already looked at notes a little bit, right? So when I showed you the keyboard before, I showed you all those white notes from one C to a C an octave higher. But what happens in songs is they transpose the notes. So now instead of being C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, it would start at D. Can everybody hear me talk okay? All right. It would start at D, and then it would move one full tone to the right. So because there's a black note between D and E, that's one full tone. But since there's no black note between E and F, you skip F and go directly to F sharp. And that's transposing. It's just really taking the whole keyboard and just moving it over to the right. One full tone. So that's what he does in this particular song, Will You Be There? And then these are the notes, like 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. OK, we'll wait for it to start again. So then. So those are the notes that are being played throughout the song. So it's a real simple song, but yet it's just taking the typical piano with white notes and moving it over and just playing the simple song that way. The notes themselves aren't very complicated, and that's one thing that makes kind of a good pop song sometimes is it's really not complicated. You saw with Hot in Here, that was a huge hit, like a really big hit if you remember. And that's because it's real simple. Look, they're just 4 chords throughout. They just keep looping around, and that's it. The Michael Jackson song, same idea. It just keeps on, playing those same kind of notes that are pretty simple over and over again, just by transposing your keyboard. All right, so then this next one here. Let's see if you can hear this. OK, good. So we're going to compare Billy Joel singing a song called Honesty to Idina Menzel, who does the voice of Elsa on Frozen, singing the same song, but like one person transposes it, so from Billy's original. So let me see if I can, yeah, the volume seems pretty high here, so let's try it out. So you can just kind of listen to what they're saying here.
I would play the piano and touch with company, but she does it in a different key. Oh. So it's going to be a little...
I was trying to be diva about it, just...
No, you gotta do your thing.
Well, she's going to depend on me to do this right. So I do it in B flat. She's doing it in D.
So you're just doing transposed versions.
Kind of.
Yeah, all right. Well, Billy, you can do it.
That's Idina Menzel's version. So that is Billy Joel playing the piano. But what he did is he took his original version of Honesty and transposed it from his original B flat, which is actually the same as A sharp, to Adina's D, because she has a higher voice, so it just sounds better when she sings it, you know, when it's a transposed version. So here's Billy Joel's original version. He's also playing piano here. All right. So the point is, you can really take any pop song and just transpose the notes and then get something that sounds a little different but still similar. And I'm sure that happens with a lot of cover songs that you'll hear, you know, like the Beatles song Yesterday is covered by a lot of other bands. And so you can hear that sometimes those songs will be transposed also. All right, so then this is How to Love by Lil Wayne. And what I wanted to go over now was symmetry in the lyrics of pop and rock songs. So you can kind of see how, you know, they write their lyrics with certain patterns. So we'll hear this one. So you can kind of see there's a pattern there, A, A, B, B, and then C, C, B, B again, and then, you know, kind of changes a little at the bottom, but keeps that same sort of a pattern. And this is actually somewhat unusual for a hip-hop song, so that's why I kind of thought this was an interesting one to look at. And then listen to the chords there, if you can, a little bit, if you can hear those chords. So moving over, these are actually the chords that you're hearing in that song. And it's interesting because there's really, this is a major chord and so is that, but the rest of them, you know, aren't really major or minor chords that we looked at that little short video in the beginning. So you kind of see instead of having the 3-to-2 ratio like the major and minor chords have, you've also got some chords in there with other ratios. And does anybody recognize, in orange over here, does anybody recognize those numbers as special numbers in math? So what do you think? Okay, so they're actually Fibonacci numbers. So a Fibonacci number is where you start with the first two numbers in the sequence are 1. So you have 1, 1, and then you add those together, you get 2. 1 plus 1 is 2. Then 1 plus 2 is 3. 2 plus 3 is 5. 3 plus 5 is 8, 8 plus 5 is 13, and so on. So those are Fibonacci numbers, so it's kind of interesting how those as chords, those ratios actually sound pretty nice in pop songs. So really, out of all the songs that I've looked at and explored the ratios of, those are the only numbers that end up coming up are the Fibonacci numbers. So that's just another place that you see them in, I guess, nature in a sense. So, all right. Over here, this song's called Miss Independent. We could hear it a little bit too. And I thought it was just interesting because it's a little bit different. Again, most of these are either major or minor chords, with the exception of this one, which changes a little bit. But I thought this was a cool song because you hear all the different elements playing the same 4 chords over and over again. Like here's... kind of more like a harp or a string instrument. His voice also, you know. So, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And it just loops around. And again, the voice and the different instruments, you know, all still playing the same chords. So this was another one, you know, just a few, like this is called Knocks You Down. And same kind of idea. I mean, it's just got those chords that are just repeating themselves. And I just kind of like this one for the pattern. I didn't put the ratios here because they're the same as the ones there. But it sort of, it'll do, you know, this chord, this chord, this chord, and then it'll repeat these two chords again, and then do something a little bit different, right, down here, which is a major chord. So it'll start with something that's not a major or minor chord the first round, and then move on to a major chord, and the other ones are minor chords in there. So kind of an interesting one. We could listen to that a little bit. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then back up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then back up. And then it kind of just repeats those same chords over and over again throughout. And then I think I have some lyrics here because I thought this was, oh no. Anyway. Okay. Okay, it's coming up now. More lyrics to look at. So while you're hearing the lyrics, you could also hear those chords over and over again repeating. And also I liked this one because it's Neo again. It's the same artist as that last song, actually, which I don't know if anyone noticed that. It may be a hint with Miss Independent here. Kanye West and Carrie Hilson are also in that song. It's actually a Carrie Hilson song. But anyway, I really picked up his lyrics here because of the pattern. A-A-B, A-A-B, and then it just rhymes 3 in a row and then 2 in a row there. But I just thought that was kind of interesting because you don't see that as often in hip-hop songs. Usually the rhymes are more kind of random, like Eminem does and stuff. So, all right. So this was just another, this is an Aerosmith song. So here's some more lyrics. So, I just wanted to explore these lyrics with you guys a little bit. So, I'll just do this. To save a little bit of time, I won't play the whole song, but that's a ballad by Aerosmith from their album Pump from, I think, 1987. And it's just kind of a nice, you know, that song has a nice melody. And one thing that I like about Aerosmith is the way the lead singer, Steven Tyler, kind of can change, he can make something sound like it rhymes by kind of changing his voice a little bit, and he's able to sort of expand his voice. So that was kind of interesting. So when you see here, I don't know if I think we got to this part here. Is it easy to sleep in the bed that we made? When you don't look back, I guess the feelings start to fade. And then he says, away. Like away is kind of, has nothing to do with the rest of the verse. And then what I thought was really interesting about this song was the way that the first verse and the second verse were so similar. They were matched up. So for example, when I go here to the second verse, you kind of see the resemblance. See how I have ring and thing rhyming there, and then fine and time rhyming there, and then nothing on the third line. And then when you go to that second stanza piece there, sleep, made, fade, keep, disguise, in your eyes. The deep is just kind of a bonus there, I guess. And so, yeah, you just kind of see the resemblance between those verses and the way that the song is structured in a way that throughout the song, you got the same thing happening multiple times, like symmetrically. So, all right. So then the next song I want to talk about is called Forever in Blue Jeans by Neil Diamond. So now we're jumping to like a singer-songwriter, right? Tried to keep a little variety here. I guess Billy Joel's a singer-songwriter too, but but anyway. This wasn't maybe as popular on the Billboard charts, but you know, it was a pretty good adult contemporary song back before I was even born. Anyway, those are the verses, and I actually do want to listen to this one, and you know, I actually have it. I don't have it hooked up there, but I do have it here. So, so we'll kind of listen to that song, and I'll talk about it a little bit. So. You guys hear that okay? All right, so I know it's not as loud, but that should be good enough, right? The first two verses, or the verses the first two times, kind of do the same thing as the Aerosmith song. They just repeat themselves, but with different lyrics. So we'll listen to that a second first. Now we go to the chorus. It picks up a little bit. Also goes a little bit higher. The notes, they start low and then they get higher. And now it gets a little higher. Just moved up a full octave. So that's what's going on there. Verse 2, we'll hear it one more time. So you can see the gradual increase. So hold on. Oh, I don't know if I got that right, but you get the point. So the point of that is it's like stair steps. I have a cousin that's a musician. That's kind of how she explained it to me when I was starting to learn this song here. And you can kind of see how it's gradually increasing in frequency, right, as it moves to the right. And so by the time you get to, you know, from the first set of verses to the second set of verses, it already built up. So now you're a full octave higher. So I thought that was kind of a cool song done that way. And then still speaking of Neil Diamond, I actually had Sweet Caroline on here somewhere too, because it's just sort of a well-known song, but we're not. I don't have time to talk about that right now. But Play Me is another one of his songs, a little on the older side, and it has a timing of 3/2. And so I want to kind of demonstrate what I think that means. And so I'll do that by playing the song again and sort of show you with hand motions. So. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So that's the 3. And it continues. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Two, 3. And it builds up too, kind of like the other Neil Diamond song. There's a build up there. Not with frequency, but more with the instruments. Now it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. 2. So anyway, that's sort of what I was going for on that particular song, and then I put the chords down here for that one. They're also a little bit different than the chords we were looking at before. Like the guy said in the video, they're just tons of chords, right? So not all of them are major or minor chords. But you do also hear the frequency or you see it going, the music going up and down throughout the song as you listen to it in a certain symmetry. All right, so then this is, the next thing, I'm going to kind of get into the Beatles a little bit now, which are, the Beatles are one of the most influential bands ever. And sort of wanted to focus on the Beatles 1965 through 1967, which is sort of kind of their center period, where they weren't new to it, but at the same time, they weren't really quite towards the end of their career together yet. And the Beatles go on forever. They don't just end in 1970 when they break up. All 4 of them go on to become solo artists. So it's kind of an amazing group. Amazing that 4 guys who were, just regular guys from Liverpool meet each other to form the most influential band ever, and then after they break up, they go on to continue to make influential music. So if you don't know who the Beatles are, that's George Harrison, John Lennon, Paul McCartney, and Ringo Starr. So I'll kind of talk about each of them individually when we get there. First song is Ticket to Ride. The reason why they're skiing there, or their skiing pictures, is because, well, besides that I love to ski, is just because John Lennon wrote this song, Ticket to Ride, on a ski trip. And there's a movie, the Beatles even made movies, back in the 60s, and one of the movies was called Help, and they go skiing in one of the scenes, and then they play this song. So it's kind of a ski song in a way, so to speak. All right, so we're going to listen to the song. Actually, it's what I thought was interesting about it is the song structure, not the lyric structure, but the song structure is A-A-B, A-B-A, and that's the entire song. Now, the intro has 4 measures. I can't really talk too much about what a measure is right now, but it's like a piece of the song. So there's 4 of them there. The first verse and second verse each have 16. The bridge has 8, the break has 2, and then there's a pause that has 1 measure. These are all powers of 2. 2 to the power of 0 is 1. 2 to the power of 1 is 2. 2 to the power of 2 is 4. 2 to the power of 3 is 8. And 2 to the power of 4 is 16. So that's one kind of cool thing about the song Ticket to Ride. In fact, I think this is one of the songs I need to play on over here. So that's the song. So here comes the first verse. And then you also see the different chords and the symmetry that's being played on those chords. These are the lyrics, by the way. But She don't care. So as I said before, it's a John Lennon song. Everywhere you see red, Paul McCartney's singing along with him. So you see the symmetry not just in the lyrics, but where they're singing the song together too. She don't care. Now they sing together here for the bridge. That's the one that 8 counts, I think. It's kind of a break right there for one measure. And then it repeats. Now, the verse is basically the same as the original one. The difference is, yeah, what you see in blue, that's the difference between the original first verse and this one. So he actually changes it up. Same thing happens in verse 2. So then we'll just hear the rest of it. The bridge is essentially the same both times around. All right, so the next song is The Night Before. It's from the same album. I'll give you guys the homework of listening to the rest of the song later since I only have like 15 minutes left. So The Night Before is another song. Now, I'm not going to have time really to get into the details of the entire song, but I wanted to talk about the dual guitar solo that happens in this song, The Night Before. Let's see if it's, yeah, I guess I don't have it. Again, I'm going to have to play it on my speakers over here. There's actually a part where Paul McCartney and George Harrison are both playing their guitars, but one is an octave above the other the whole time. And that's in the song called The Night Before. Normally I'd play the whole song, but I don't think we need to hear the whole song just for that part. I hope. Let's see. Okay, I think it'll be coming up in a second. So you hear them playing their guitars an octave apart. Okay, I think it's here. No, it's coming up though. Hopefully it's next. Yeah, here it is, I'm sure. So they're actually playing an octave apart, kind of interesting. Now, George Harrison is the lead guitarist of the band, and Paul McCartney's the bass player, but he also plays a lot of other instruments. They all play tons of instruments. One reason I picked this slide is because that's John Lennon. Well, this is Paul McCartney here. That's George Harrison on his guitar. And then next to him on the piano was John Lennon, who wasn't really a piano player originally. I mean, that's something that he just, picked up. So, all of them are very talented at playing a bunch of instruments. So, all right, cool. Then came Rubber Soul. I don't really have time to get into that album right now, but that's a pretty influential one too. Followed by Revolver. One song on Revolver is this one. It's called Yellow Submarine. So, anyway, if you listen to the chorus, it's going to play the chorus right now. Actually. Those are all major chords in the chorus. Kind of interesting. Anyway, And Your Bird Can Sing. Speaking of the night before, there's a connection between the night before and Your Bird Can Sing, and that is, there's another duo of guitar solo thing happening here. Now, half of this guitar solo is played at the start of the song, and the whole thing is played twice throughout the song. It's a little different, and then pieces are played periodically. It's a little different than the other one. Here's kind of the best way to explain it. Here's the left guitar and the right guitar. First, they're 2 full tones apart. Or maybe, yeah, I think it's 2 full tones apart. And that happens for a while until they reach a point where the red guitar goes up an octave. And now they're still 2 full notes apart in the opposite direction as they're going along. So it's really, it looks like they're 6 notes apart now, 6 full tones apart. So I think this is another one where I'll have to play the song, and then I'll try to explain a little bit about it. Oops. Here it is. That's the guitar solo. That's a piece of it. That's like the first half of it. And I kind of put the notes that are being played here. Those are part of the pieces throughout the song, right there. Okay, here it is. Now starts the second half. And then I kind of tried to spread it out so you could see, for example, left guitar is playing A while right guitar is playing F. And then you can see how, how when you go A, F, B, G, C, A, because remember it goes from G. I know I have the sharps in there, but you can kind of ignore those in the interest of time right now. So C goes to A, D goes to B, and you can see how they're going along the same place, and then the key actually changes to B major. So it starts in F, the second half starts in F minor and then goes over to B major. So the chords are actually changing throughout too. So, all right, I'm Only Sleeping. There's a backwards guitar solo in here, and that's performed by George Harrison. So the way I kind of try to explain that is the solo is written forward. So think of this as the solo written forward, just some blue function. Then the notes were rewritten backwards. So that's flipped over an axis, and you can think of the notes being written backwards here. Then they recorded it backwards. See the red, the red piece in the function? You can imagine that as having it being recorded backwards, and then for the actual song, it's flipped back forwards. So that's kind of how they end up writing the guitar solo in this particular song called I'm Only Sleeping. I'll let you know when that guitar solo part comes in. But you can kind of hear the flipping in the song a little bit too. Okay, here it comes. All right, it's not the only song that uses this strategy. Are You Experienced? I'm not going to play these right now, but Are You Experienced by the Jimi Hendrix Experience does that in that song also. And Give It Away by the Red Hot Chili Peppers does it. It's pretty easy to find if you listen to those two songs. I don't know if you know Are You Experienced? That's kind of a weird song, like psychedelic or whatever you want to call it. So kind of interesting. All right, Got to Get You Into My Life. It's just a really catchy song. It's a Paul McCartney song. And I just really liked the perfection of the lyrics in that song. Like the way that the song is structured, it's perfect, you know? And it's a pretty catchy song. I'll see if I have time to play a little bit of it at least. So. Interesting thing about this song, and I'll let it play while I talk. At the end of the song, he starts singing in an octave higher, and that's why I made the letter smaller down below there. But you can see the perfection of the symmetry in the lyrics here. So that's what I was going for. So anyway, I think that's about all the time we're going to have for that part. These bands here, Chicago and Earth, Wind & Fire, were heavily influenced by that particular song. The band Chicago was kind of formed because they loved those horns that were playing in the song that you could hear a little bit. And so they formed a band, rock band, that does air instruments like that. So that was kind of cool. And Earth, Wind & Fire has a version of Got to Get You Into My Life that was actually released around the same time Got to Get You Into My Life, the original version, was released, because it was released 10 years after it was made for some reason. Tomorrow Never Knows is just kind of a weird song. I'm not, although it's pretty cool, I'll just kind of talk about it without playing it, because my students get a little bit, I guess, they get a little weirded out by it. But if you want to hear this song, it's a pretty popular Beatles song. You know, why not? Why don't I just play it while I talk about it a little bit? So you'll know what I mean. So you're going to hear like a laughing sound in there. That's what they call the seagull. That's actually McCartney laughing, and it's superimposed and accelerated. All right, then we get into a B-flat major chord. Anyway, a lot of weird sounds, and these are all formed by transpositions, I guess, in a sense, in the music. Playing things backwards, playing things, not an octave higher, but maybe transposing, taking the song that was the way it was recorded and transposing it. Just a lot of really weird things going on. And it's a John Lennon song. That's the main. John Lennon is like the main person singing in the song. But a lot of those weird sounds come from Paul McCartney, actually. He actually should be credited for those weird sounding pieces in there. So there's another song called Taxman, which is connected to Tomorrow Never Knows. Taxman is the first song on the album. Tomorrow Never Knows is the last song on the album. But Taxman is in the key of D major. Tomorrow Never Knows is played in the key of C major, except for one of the loops, and that's because it's transposed. The solo, which we're listening to right now, contains all the loops that we looked at before, and Ringo's drums closed-mic'd and heavily compressed, and one more thing. The guitar solo for Taxman is transposed to C major and then reversed. So there's more backwards music in this song too, besides, what the obvious is. It features a tambura played by Harrison in the intro, a tambourine played by Ringo Starr, and a Leslie speaker on Lennon's voice, which you're hearing right now. So there you have it. That's the picture. All right, so for a brief history lesson in 4 minutes or less, after Revolver, Rubber Soul, and Help, and all these other albums they had before that, they came up with this concept album called Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, where they just throw everything in that worked from the experiments they did in those other albums and threw it into this album, which is one of the most successful albums of all time. I think it's considered the most influential album of all time. So check that one out. They just celebrated their 50th anniversary of its release last summer. All right, speaking of backwards music, this is Missy Elliott, back to hip hop a little bit. Anyway, that you guys might know that song a little bit. What happens here is Missy Elliott says the same thing forwards and backwards, and it's in a hip hop song. I'll have to get to that another time, so I can just kind of go through all these slides. Another one is the Eminem song "Headlights," featuring Nate Roos, where there's a piece in that song that's played forwards and then backwards the same way. So, you know, just kind of speaking about backwards music in songs. All right, what else? This is The Monster. I thought it was a cool song because it just got a lot of random rhymes going on that Eminem threw in there. I rapped this one for my students, by the way, so they're kind of impressed by that. What else? At the end, just give me a minute. I'm not really going to be able to rap totally, but you'll hear Eminem rap in a little bit because he's better at it than I am, I guess. So this is, you guys might be familiar with a song by Michael Jackson called PYT. Well, several years later, Kanye West came up with a kind of a cover version of PYT where he took the Chipmunks part of PYT, which goes something like that, and he stretched it out. So when I teach my students about transformations, stretching graphs, you know, by a factor of 2 or by a factor of 4, we can also say that the song was stretched by a factor of 11/8. So when you listen to Kanye West's version, you can hear that same chipmunk part slowed down. So, all right, so this is a song that's in the Guinness Book of World Records for fastest song, fastest rap hit, I think fastest, most amount of words per second or something like that. So we'll listen to that one sort of as to conclude this talk. Just because it's kind of a good place to end it. So.
Look, I was going to go easy on you, not to hurt your feelings. I'm only going to get this chance.
Niggas coming at you with supersonic speed.
I can't do it. Anyway. All right, so I thought that was kind of a good place to end because this is the greatest number of words per second in a hit single with 1,560 words in 6 minutes and 4 seconds, which is reduced 1,560 words over 364 seconds, or 4.3 words per second. And that's actually for the whole song. That part, though, is even faster. And then, anyway, there was one more. Just kind of note the prime numbers or the square numbers that show up here. 25, 36, and 49. This is a different song, but I don't have time to get into it right now. The song's called Forever. But you know what? I'm out of time.